The Cleveland Browns 2024 NFL Draft continues. PFF John Kosko is in. It's all going down now. Your latest Locked On Browns is live.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things dog pound, LGB and ELOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd just keeps growing and growing. Don't miss out. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube page, and don't miss anything. The show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. PFF's John Kosko in. Can't go before the draft, can't go after the draft without obviously putting everything through the PFF lens. John, I think everybody certainly is probably a little sour, but I mean, you have 6 picks, and the biggest issue the Browns had was that 71 pick gap between 85 and 156. It really didn't give them much maneuverability if they even wanted to. Stayed at home, and very oddly for Andrew Berry, makes all 6 selections that he walked into the draft with. Go off the top, certainly Mike Hall. Some thoughts on Mike, Zach Zinter, 2 players that had some competition against each other. It's spring. All right, my eyes are running. Last night I went to bed with 2 tissues up my nose. It's spring everywhere, and it's not the best thing in the world. But John, obviously thoughts. Mike Hall, Zach Zinter, Browns go to the Big Ten. 2 guys with some really good history against each other, coming from storied programs, and nobody's coming in to start right away, but could be foundational pieces certainly down the road.
Yeah, for sure. I think Michael has a better chance of, getting significantly more playing time than Zinter does. Zinter had a nasty leg injury at the end of the regular season, the final regular season game for the Wolverines. And for Michael Hall, I think, you look at that room there, he can be a really good rotational piece for them. And he's going to be, he's an ultra athletic defensive tackle, a bit undersized, but if he can provide that pass rushing prowess, he's gonna find a home there for the Browns in 2024. Zinter, obviously, he's going to be behind either Teller, who he played right guard this past year, so he'd either be behind Teller or Batonio, and unless one of those guys gets hurt, he's probably not going to see much of the field. He might see it in 6 offensive lineman type of looks or what have you, but he's a guy that they're going to want to look to develop this year. So their first 2 picks, I thought, were, the way the board fell, kind of understandable. You're talking about at the number 54, they potentially could go offensive line at the, especially offensive tackle, or they could have gone potentially wide receiver there. But really, a lot of those players that you probably thought of highly were already taken. It just kind of dried up in a sense, and they probably just took the best player they thought was available there. From the offensive tackles that went after them, I wasn't super high on them. The wide receivers, it took until the 3rd round to pick 65 for a wide receiver to go, and that was Malachi Corley, who I did draft to the Browns in the mock draft that we did at PFF. But I think I think in terms of who was there, Michael Hall was a solid pick, and maybe a bit of a reach for Zinter and not the position I would have gone, but I understand it. I think he's a good player. He can give up a single sack in 2023 and was really strong in run game.
Now, the thing that's interesting with Hall is the young man, Mike will not turn 21 until June. So obviously you're getting a guy at a really, really ripe age. And one thing that absolutely for the Browns is I think the Browns right away say, well, you know what? He'll have a role here forever long this first contract is. The question is going to be is, can we get more out of him? Can we get him to be more of an every down defensive tackle? Because when you start looking at nickel and dime, and that's where obviously his opportunity would come early. The athleticism is there. His pro day, he had himself closer to 300 pounds, so you're not worried about him basically getting tossed out of the club on the interior, even though when it's going to be pass rushing situations. So you're banking on athleticism. You're also kind of banking on your coaching that you can get more out of this guy. But they went into this draft and the top 4 defensive tackles on this team are 29, 30, 31, and 32. You drastically needed to get younger. They did just that. And also, most everybody around here, it's maybe 1 year really left on their deal, legitimately, or you got Shelby Harris, where it's a 2-year contract, sounds like a 1-year deal. Dalvin Tomlinson, this is year 2 of his deal. So you have somebody at least who's going to be around for a few seasons.
Yeah, Dalvin Tomlinson is actually, he's obviously a really good player. He was actually one of his worst seasons as a run defender for him last year, but he's still been a really high quality player. And Quentin Jefferson's not a guy that you can really rely on especially as a run defender. He's not. That's not his prowess. He's a pass rusher. So them getting obviously an athletic, young, talented player in Michael Hall, he'll need to just stout up against the run, and his ability there was lacking in college. But I mean, really, he's going to be able to make some headway in this lineup, because I don't know if Quentin, I can't remember what Quentin Jefferson's contract was like, and Maurice Hurst isn't guaranteed anything, even though he was awesome in the snaps he wasn't able to play last year. He's just constantly hurt. So there's definitely a role for him to carve out there. And the guy that they picked last year in the 3rd round at number 99 overall, Siaki Ika, I mean, he didn't look good at all in the limited snaps that he had last year. And we know that, he's a guy that probably needed to lose weight and get in better shape and, have some better athleticism. So, I think for him, he's a guy that can, obviously they need to get younger there, and they need to get athletic there, and that's what they got in the guy.
Now for the offensive line, everybody thought about, we just assumed this youth movement was coming. Jermaine Ifedi, Brian Allen yesterday. And it's not that these guys are household names. Obviously, these guys have plenty of starting experience, but for a room that we just all assumed was going to find a way to get younger, they probably, in fact, got a little older.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Jermaine Ifedi is not a player that you're going to have wanting to start for you, right? So,
sure.
I think it's a guy that, like, he is going to probably be a camp body, and bringing in like a Zinter, like drafting Zinter, basically allows you to go younger there, and he's probably going to be the sixth, the second guard or whatever. So if one of those guys needs to come out, they get hurt or something like that, he's going in there, because they're not going to be playing Ifedi there. They're not going to be. He's just never been a really quality player in the league or whatever. So especially at even the offensive tackle position, and you can't really move him around. So it's they while they need to get younger, I know that they like DeJuan Jones. DeJuan Jones played really well last year, right? So like he's going to be the second. I don't know how they're going to play this out, right? It's going to be interesting however they play this out, because Jedrick Wills is probably the last year he's going to be with the Browns. And they don't have a left tackle for the future beyond him right now. So I don't know if they're going to try to see if DeJuan Jones can work out at left tackle, or if they're just going to keep him at right tackle and be able to move off of Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills, after this coming season. So, Ifedi is not a guy that you're going to play much. Akeem Adeniji is not even going to be a guy that you're going to play all that much. He didn't play at all in 2023. And any time that he has seen the field, he's struggled. So tough to see for my Kansas guys. So I think there's a lot of question marks that the Browns have at the left tackle position and the tackle for the future. I think if these guys like Conklin and Wills can be healthy for this year, they'll be fine. And then from a guard position, obviously those guys are getting old too. They at least drafted somebody that can eventually replace them and hopefully develop behind them.
John Kosko having to give some harsh justice to a former Kansas Jayhawk. I'm sure that one burned. We're going to continue on. Your latest Locked On Browns. We're going to talk a little bit about Jamari Thrash, talk a little bit about Nathaniel Watson. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Don't anybody go anywhere. Time out. Game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that. But there's just so much good stuff in this game. And Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with your friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or you heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate you all for making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd. If you're not in by now, making new plans, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. PFF's John Kosko in. We are going through the Cleveland Browns draft class. Of course, we discussed a little Michael Hall, a little Zach Zinter. Then came that layoff, and from pick 85 to pick 156, which probably felt like it was almost a full calendar year, for God's sakes. The Browns did get in on the wide receiver class a little bit, John, and jump in. Georgia State for 4 years, finished out his career at Louisville, averaged about, I think it was 62 receptions over his last 2 years, right around 1,000 yards, right around 6 touchdowns. Jamari Thrash, wide receiver, Louisville, John.
Yeah, really good after the catch type of player. The most yards after the catch since 2022. Best mark of all this class. And forced 17 missed tackles in 2023. So while he's on the smaller side of a wide receiver, he has a slender build, 6'1", like 185 or whatever. He can make some heyday after the catch, and he's athletic. He's just a really all around solid player. I think he does a really good job of separating. One thing that he does struggle with is contested catches, but I think if he can just get open and you find him that he's open, he's going to make some plays. And he's a guy that can beat you deep. He can beat you underneath. So they can do a lot of different things with him. And I think for the Browns and drafting him, they keep making swings at that wide receiver position. They have yet to use a high quality pick on the wide receiver, which, I would consider more of like top 2 rounds as going for the premium draft pick on a wide receiver. They have yet to do that. Obviously they went 3rd a couple of years in a row, and then now a 5th round pick on a guy. So it'll it's not like he's going to be a number 1 wide receiver. I don't think anybody's projecting that right now. But it's a guy that can separate. He's a really good route runner, and he's learning from some really good route runners too. So there's nuance when it comes to the NFL. And you're talking about Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, 2 of the best route runners in the NFL, and then Elijah Moore is also a really good route runner. So Browns have guys that can get open, and that's really what you want at the position.
And and a room again that we don't know the way it's going to work out. What we know at the time being is that Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore are scheduled to be free agents at the end of the 2024 season. So a selection of Jamari Thrash could be huge for 2025, or it could just be a difficult spot for the kid to be in, because he and Cedric Tillman could be 2 guys still waiting on the outside, looking in the wide receiver room for the Cleveland Browns. 2023 SEC Player of the Year. A little off the Browns' radar as far as age. Couple of incidents for Nathaniel Watson in his time. But from this, and it came out right away and basically said it, and it certainly came out from Andrew Berry, and I think it was pretty easy for everybody to draw the comparisons, because you go back to Takitaki, and Takitaki was an edge player at BYU for a while. So you bring in certainly here Nathaniel Watson, and you get that type of player, 10 sacks last year, but really more just a big physical linebacker. He's not going to go sideline to sideline, but 6'2", 240 in the hole, he can certainly handle it.
Yeah, and what's funny about you talk about the age, so he's only less than a year older, or he's only less than a year younger than Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and Koramoah has been in the league for quite a while.
That's get a second contract. That's get a second contract.
Right. So but the thing is, like, it's you're talking about a 6th round pick. Like, it seems like their age guardrails go out the window in that sense. It's like at that point they're probably like looking at some type of athletic upside towards a player. He was athletic. I think this whole class is pretty athletic. It's one of those. I was looking at it from an on-field perspective. Andrew Berry definitely goes after athletic players, and if we already knew this, but there's been some head scratchers in terms of the relative athletic score, but we got in-game tracking that kind of says something different for players. And Watson is one of those guys. He's a guy that wins with length. He wins with strength. He's good athleticism. He's not like the greatest athlete at the position, but he's got good enough size to be able to to take on blocks, to do some dirty work on early downs, and also on some special teams too. So you're talking about a 6th-round pick. While you would love for a guy to make the roster and make some heyday every time you pick a guy, and he's a 6th-round pick for a reason. And I think his early calling card would be special teams, and you hope that he makes a roster and develops that way.
The one thing where I did feel like, linebacker was going to be something that we're going to address, and with JOK, probably, this is something we'll hear probably in the weeks, months to come, that JOK is going to get some sort of contract extension with the Cleveland Browns. For a team that never, wanted to pay a linebacker, similar to the running back position, and then one for that basically just says, well, I'm going to be the one that breaks your mold. And it's kind of what JOK has done for this team. But it also means they might get just a tad bit stingier as far as applying any other money to the room. So you have to feel that it's going to be JOK, and it's most likely going to be all guys on first contracts.
Yeah, I think for JOK, they picked him 52nd overall.
And when you draft a linebacker there, you're hoping it with the intention you're going to go a second contract. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he's earned that, right? His level of play, especially this past year. He's
you got defensive tackles for him, and you all of a sudden saw that the linebacker was pretty good when he had defensive tackles.
It's shocking, right? It's shocking. So I think he's obviously a really good athlete. He's very difficult to block at the second level for offensive linemen. So he's a guy that just is disruptive at that linebacker position, athletic, and is often in really good positions. So I think for them to be able to, they're going to give him a contract extension. They need to get young at that position. They just have to keep being. That's not a position they're going to be paying multiple linebackers to. As soon as one of these guys has their contracts up or their rookie contracts up, they're probably moving off of them for the most part, unless they really show that they've earned it. So, Tony Fields is, he's probably on the way out for the team. We'll see what Muhammad Diabate can do for the team if he gets some more playing time. But I think for this position group, they want to go young and cheap as much as possible, because they've got it's from a value standpoint, like you find a good coverage linebacker there. That's kind of what you need, and then you fill it with guys that are willing and able in the run game to step up and shed blocks and make some clog some gaps that way.
Yeah, and the Cleveland Browns are never going to be hurting for money. I know everybody wants to create that cliche, but it does not mean that they're also not trying to find some way to create more, or certainly save some. We're going to continue on here. Your latest Locked On Browns, PFF John Kosko is in, talking Cleveland Browns draft class. Everybody stick around. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, and we are closing out your latest Locked On Browns. I appreciate everybody who makes the show their first listen every day. The everyday crowd. You are a bunch of filthy animals, but you're my filthy animals. I suggest more of you be like the filthy animals and subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. So going through here, first 4 selections, obviously we get to the final 2 of day 3. I know some people who were this deep into their draft research were excited about Miles Harden. And for me, I always, and we talked about it with Pete the other night, whenever somebody wants to use the word prick and a defensive back, it piques my interest. Somebody's got to be that guy that goes out there. And it may not be the best thing in the world for the defense, but somebody's got to have that attitude, that heart for your team. And Miles Harden, certainly that kind of guy. And then I don't think he was. I said they had to get younger in the room, but I really was stunned that they went and took another defensive tackle. But I think it was one where they just probably saw this 20 picks away and said, you know what? If this kid makes it there, Briggs, I'm not even going to bother trying to fight the UDFA fight for him. I'm just going to make it easy on myself and just go get it done.
Yeah. So by the way, with Juwan Briggs, we get a lot of our age stuff from the
he's on Twitter telling people he's only 22.
Yep. So everybody thought he was maybe 23. Now we think that he's based on him, according to him, he's actually 22. So not as old as we thought of at the draft time, but for Briggs, it's an interesting case of like I like the player, and I think he played a lot out of position in 2023.
Another thing he'll tell you on social media.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it too. I mean, he was playing on the edge mostly as an edge defender in 2023.
So like him and Alex Wright had like the reverse college careers.
Yeah,
one was playing on the interior, he ended up going outside. One was on the outside, him going on the inside.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a guy that needed to play on the interior. I think he's good and athletic, but his game isn't out on over tackles. It's on the interior against centers and guards. So he was much more productive when he was on the interior. His pass rushing win rate there was. This past year jumped up to 14% when he was on the interior versus I think it was like 7% this year, like overall. So when they really kind of hurt him by that in that regard. So is he going to make the roster? It's going to be tough, right? Because like the room is the room. They're only going to keep 4, maybe they keep 5 defensive tackles. So the chances he makes the roster are probably slim. Maybe they are able to stash him on the practice squad for the entire season and nobody else is picking him up. I mean, he did go into 7th round, so that's a real possibility. When you look at Miles Harden, he's a guy that he's a physical player. You talk about that. We had him much higher on our board than what he went. So we had him as the number of 151st overall prospect in this class, and he went 227. So I thought they got really good value there, and a guy that really legit could make the roster for them. And you just never know what how it all shakes out. They're obviously very deep in the secondary, but he had 7 forced incompletions, and it recorded an interception on just 45 throws into his coverage. He recorded 8 stops in coverage and another 9 on run play. So he's definitely productive as a coverage corner. And then he was also very willing to come up and stop the run, when it came to the run game, which you don't see a lot from cornerbacks. But he played mostly outside in college. He probably is going to need to see a nickel role in the NFL. But I think he's a guy that can, he's got good athleticism. He's got good quicks. He doesn't have the long speed that you'd want to see. But I think if you move him to the slot and he can find a role there, he can be a productive cornerback.
And we're going to give you one, John, outside of the Cleveland Browns draft. Fairly simple. What in the world were the Atlanta Falcons thinking? I have zero issue if you like Michael Penix. But the thing is 7 weeks ago, when you went after this you had the same opportunity to get Michael Penix then than you did once you got to the draft and you already had Kirk Cousins. So I don't know what you handed Kirk Cousins a bag full of money for. And look, Kirk Cousins, don't be upset. You got handed another bag of money. So just shut up and take your money.
Yeah.
But you could have gone and gotten cement. You could have spent the Kirk Cousins money on some impact for your defense. Oh, there's a million ways you could have done this. Look, as we always, who cares who your backup quarterback is? Because most of the time, nobody ever wants to see him. For Atlanta, it looked like you had a really nice ball rolling, and then it was like, well, why? And plus, the other thing is, Penix is going to be sitting there, and there's going to be people that are going to want to see him, and which is going to make Penix kind of in a tough spot because, look, I know I'm not starting, but there's going to be chatter about him when he's going to get some playing time. I think the whole thing was just done terribly, and I honestly think he put both quarterbacks in a terrible situation.
Yeah, people comparing this to like how the Packers have done it with Jordan Love and even Aaron Rodgers before him.
They didn't take him top 10.
They didn't take him top 10, and they also didn't take him immediately after giving him a monster contract, right? Like, I think Aaron Rodgers' extension was done a year prior, maybe 2 years prior. So it's not like that type of situation. This was like, hey, we signed a guy to a monster deal, and now we're already drafting his replacement. And I get it in the sense that, like, man, if you really loved Michael Penix Jr., if you thought that this dude was the bee's knees, if he was it at that position and he was going to become a top 5 quality quarterback in the NFL, I get it. Like, you just draft that guy and it's kind of like, if your evaluation on this guy is like, this is the best guy we've seen in a couple of draft classes, we've evaluated the guys in the next couple of guys drafts, we don't see it with these guys. I get it, right? Because you want to be able to future-proof your roster. But man, is it an extreme risk that you're taking there? Because are you going to light a fire under Kurt's butt here for, the 2024 season? Maybe. But, like, Kurt is already a good quarterback. It's not like he wasn't, like, performing up to expectations.
And if anybody knows about this situation, it's him. He literally went to Washington when they had just drafted RG3 and basically went to Washington with hey, I don't even know if I'm ever getting a shot to throw a pass in the NFL.
Yeah, and exactly. So he understands that from that perspective or whatever. And so, I don't know. It's a risk. It's a strong risk. And, we always clamor that, like, you should never be, like, just content being at the quarterback position. It's not like Kirk Cousins is a Super Bowl winning quarterback, right? So I get it. Like, if you don't think Kurt is your long-term answer, and obviously he's not, but, like, and you find this guy, like, I get it, but man, it's so risky.
And the other thing, you're going to have some sort of division within the team because the younger guys most likely are going to gravitate to Penix. It's just bad. It's a terrible. When it even first happened, I assumed there was going to be like a follow up to it, like so and so just traded with the Atlanta Falcons to acquire Michael Penix. Basically, we're just going to draft him, and now I'm going to hold my own little mini auction here to see what I can get back for him, but. Atlanta wasn't that smart, and they can say whatever they want. Arthur Blank did. Arthur Blank looks like he's an older gentleman these days, but Arthur Blank certainly wanted to have some sort of understanding of why in the world we just wrote a check for $150 million to one quarterback, and we turned around 6 weeks later, and the first pick we made in the draft was another quarterback. Crazy. It is the NFL. John Kosko, PFF. Always appreciate the time breaking down the draft class here. Before you know it, we're going to be shifting gears, and summer will be here, and time to get on that. We'll still be here every day doing what we do, so don't you all worry about that. Make sure you're following at John Kosko 3. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate all of you, of course, who make the show your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, just get in. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Don't miss out on anything. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcast. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.